regular Canadians get it. I literally get stopped on the street by people who say, wow, internal trade, let's do this.
Sure you do, Freeland. Yeah, I am sure that you're just walking down the street and a random Canadian sees you and says, that's Chrystia Freeland. And walks up to you and says, wow, internal trade, let's do it. I'm pretty sure what they say is, that's Chrystia Freeland. You're a piece of... Chrystia Freeland decided to make an appearance on CTV with Vassy Kapelos, and it was nice to see, again, Vassy not really give her a lot of wiggle room and challenge her on the Liberals' record for the last 10 years. So let's take a look.
With me now is Transport and Internal Trade Minister Chrystia Freeland. Hi, Minister. It's good to see you again. Thank you for making the time.
It's great to be with you, Vassy.
So a few days ago, we spoke on the prospect of this legislation, and you, I remember clearly, kind of spoke to the camera, spoke to the opposition, and asked for unanimous consent on something like this in order to see it go forward very quickly. What work have you done to secure the opposition's support of this?
Well, I was in the House of Commons for 4 hours on Thursday night from 6:30 to 10:30. It was a committee of the whole. Most of the questions directed to me were about internal trade. And one of the things actually that was encouraging for me about that was the questions were all tending in the direction of, let's do this faster. And so my response to the colleagues who were asking the questions was, I agree with you. Let's get this done. And I do think, you know, we as a government are asking the opposition to support these measures. So I think this is a policy whose time has come. Economists, wonks have agreed for a really long time that it's the right thing to do. And now we have a window of opportunity. So let's do it.
Ladies and gentlemen, can you imagine walking into a room with your work colleagues and saying, hey everybody, time to bow down because I worked for 4 hours yesterday. I worked for 4 hours. I sat in a seat and I answered some questions for 4 hours. Isn't that great of me? Aren't I just a super worker? Can you imagine?
4 whole hours?
She probably, went out to the lobby, got something to eat.
I went to the lobby and got some catering. Yeah.
But can you imagine the reaction that you would get? It would not be one of applause, I'm sure. Just saying.
The FMM, we also spoke a little bit about the degree to which this will counter what the United States is doing, because that is certainly what the Prime Minister is selling it as, and yourself too. Talking about that giving Canadians the ability to give ourselves what a foreign government can take away. So basically this can supplant. And I wanted to ask you more specifically, because the Conservatives' chief criticism today was this is a small step, but it doesn't go far enough. According to Scotiabank, 19% of Canada's GDP in 2023 was attributed to exports to the United States. If this is between 1 and 4% of an addition to our GDP, that certainly will not supplant what the United States can take away.
So let me talk a bit about what that means, because that's significant. And the first time I listened to this, I kind of glossed over it just because it just went. So what the bill is allegedly trying to do is say, oh, we're gonna remove our reliance on our exports to the United States, and this bill is going to save us. It's going to save our economy, and when in reality, it's going to increase our GDP, allegedly, and this is by Liberal calculations, so that's probably in the negative, but allegedly it's going to increase our GDP between 1 and 4%.
How?
With these new projects.
Magic, okay.
Yeah. Now, what Vassy points out correctly, is that last year, about 20% of our GDP was made up of exports to the United States. So for the Liberals to come out and say, this bill is saving us and it's saving our economy, well, 20% is 5 times higher than 4%. So in order to make up that difference, which is allegedly what you're saying this will do, you need to increase our GDP by 20% from internal projects, internal activities. And you're not doing that. So this is not a nation-saving bill. This is a we'll see type of a bill. That's what this is. So no, this is not going far enough, and that's what the conservative criticism is.
Well, and it's interesting because Pierre probably have had released a video. I don't know if it was today. I saw it today, but I don't know if it was today or if it was in the last few days, where he was saying that we're selling our LNG to the States at a loss. We need to start selling it to Europe, start selling it to Asia, reduce their carbon footprints, but also we can sell it to them for something like 6 times higher than what we're selling it to the States for. So if we do that, if we build pipelines and do that and build liquefaction facilities, then we can definitely increase our GDP. So why aren't the Liberals doing that?
Well, and that's the whole point, right? If we because the United States knows that they're basically our only customer for this stuff,
right?
Because we can't really get it across the ocean. A, because of infrastructure or limited infrastructure, and B, our laws prevent it. Our laws literally prevent it in terms of the tanker ban laws that we've talked about before. So when you have that, that's really handcuffing us on what we can do. But if we increase the amount of customers that we have for this stuff, now it puts us in a much stronger negotiating position. And we can say, hey, you know what? Well, we're not going to sell you, Mr. Trump, all of this oil because we have other customers that want it and we only have so much. So we're going to sell it to them unless you want to buy it at, an equal price.
Yeah, if you want to buy it at fair market price instead of this special price that we've been giving you, then let's do it. But we have other customers now. The only reason the States is getting it for so cheap from Canada is because we have no other customers. Because, again, BC doesn't want pipelines and neither does Quebec. We can't get our materials to Tidewater.
Right. And the issue with our pipeline out east, and it's not even out east, is it goes through through Western Canada, down through Michigan, and then back into Ontario. So the issue is if the United States wanted to shut off a lot of that gas to Eastern Canada, they could, and we'd be screwed because we have no other way of getting it there.
Right.
So this is where that comes into play.
Except Vassy, that's 19% of Canada's total GDP. And in fact, 20% of Canada's total GDP is accounted for by internal trade. So the business that we do with each other, even today, with the trade barriers that are in place, is significant. And for sure, there are different numbers that different economists come up with on what will the benefits be of internal trade. A robust one that I often cite, because it comes from the work of Trevor Tombe, who has been working on this for years, is if we get this right, we can add $200 billion to our economy.
So, a lot of economists have been looking at this, but don't listen to them. Listen to the one that talks most favorably about what we're trying to do. This is the guy that I want you to listen to. Really? Really?
That is really significant, especially for a policy that doesn't cost us anything. But I think the important thing to come back to is everyone agrees that this is a good thing to do. Everyone agrees it's going to make us richer. everyone actually agrees that it's going to knit our country together. This is also a patriotic thing to do, you know, making it easier for Canadians to do business with each other, for Canadians to travel around the country and keep on working, making it easier for a truck to drive from Halifax to Vancouver. It's also about knitting our country together, and at a time when, you know, this is a critical moment. It is an economic crisis. Surely this is a moment when, if there is a measure available that costs us nothing, that makes us richer, that unites us, let's just do it. And the premiers get it.
If it was so easy, though, and if it was so consequential, why didn't Liberals do it or try to lead the charge on it over the last 10 years? Like, is it as easy as you're pitching it to be? Because right now we've got some federal exemptions coming down with this, a framework for labor mobility. Not all the provinces have signed on to things or done deals with each other. Like, again, I just want to make sure Canadians are clear on what the actual consequence of what you're saying is going to happen is.
Oh, I am not saying that this is easy.
So you were saying a bunch of things that implied that this was easy, that implied that this was straightforward, and it's no problem. But when you're called on this, well, why haven't you done this for the last 10 years? Is this is so easy and this is such a great idea and yada, 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 yada.
Well, I never said it was easy.
I never said specifically it was easy.
I just implied it heavily.
Yeah. And this is the issue, right? Not even a couple days after this love fest, allegedly, with the premiers and Mark Carney on Monday, not even a couple days went by before there was already cracks and shots being fired between them. And the one that we're talking about is between basically everybody else and David Eby. When they're saying, yeah, pipelines make sense, and David Eby's like, not in my province.
But, you know, the thing is, and we had asked an MP about this, and they confirmed for us that when it's a federal pipeline, the provinces have zero jurisdiction. They could run one right through BC, and BC wouldn't have a say.
Right, and they don't even need the Indigenous people's permission. They can just
do it.
So it's not something they have to do. Is it wise to not
cooperate? For
Yeah,
sure. But
right.
I mean, this is critical. If Canada wants to be a leader in energy, then this is something that we need. This is non-negotiable anymore.
I am saying that this is a great thing to do, that it is the right thing to do, that it will help us a lot. But you are totally right to be pointing to the fact that it's hard, that there's a reason it hasn't happened yet. There's a reason that even though there has been an economic consensus that it's the right thing to do, we haven't done it. Each one of those barriers is in place not because, you know, people are dumb or evil. There have been specific reasons they've been put in place. There are, you know, interests that have been in favor of it. But, you know, Vassy, what I have experienced is sometimes what it takes, you know, there's a distance between a really good policy and something which is politically possible. And what you need to be able to do as a country, as political leaders, is seize the moment. You need to recognize the moment and seize the moment. And when it comes to internal trade, this is the moment, and we're seeing it, right? We're seeing it from the premiers. There are 7 different pieces of legislation going on across the country. Provinces are leading the charge. They get it. Regular Canadians get it. I literally get stopped on the street by people who say, wow, internal trade, let's do this.
Sure you do. Sure you do, Freeland. Yeah, I am sure that you're just walking down the street and a random Canadian sees you and says, that's Chrystia Freeland. And walks up to you and says, wow, internal trade, let's do it. I'm pretty sure what they say is, that's Chrystia Freeland. You're a piece of... And then...
Let's walk on the other sidewalk, honey.
Yeah, let's watch on the other sidewalk. Pretty sure that's the conversation that goes on here.
Let's cross the street.
Yeah. Yeah. So, give me a break.
Australia did this 30 years ago, and it has worked. It's made every Australian a little bit richer. It has knit that country more closely together. I do agree with you, it's hard. One of the reasons I'm really glad to be talking to you today is I want Canadians to recognize this is a great opportunity, but we need to seize it. The federal government can't do it alone. We need opposition parties to vote for this in Parliament. And actually, all of us have to help the premiers of the provinces and territories, give them the political support they need to get this across the line.
So when you talk about seizing the moment, I want to talk about the other half of the bill, which is about building projects in the national interest and kind of changing the process by which those projects are approved if deemed to be in the national interest. And I want to put a real life example to you, because the examples provided today at the press conference or late last week at the press conference or in the document are stuff that's kind of already on the way, not controversial. The pitch from Alberta is a brand new pipeline to take oil from Alberta to the northwest coast of British Columbia. Premier Eby says no. Today the Prime Minister said if a province is against it, we're not going to force it on them. So who ultimately will make the decision about that pipeline?
So the legislation being put forward, the One Canada legislation, is about identifying and expediting projects in the national interest. It's about putting ourselves in a country in a position to build big things and to build them with the speed that the moment requires. I really love the examples the Prime Minister gave from our history, right? Expo 67, the St. Lawrence Seaway. Now is a moment when we have to do things at that scale and that speed. I'm the Transport Minister. I am really excited about high-speed rail. I am really excited about, you talked about that Western corridor. It's a Western and Arctic corridor. It includes Grays Bay, Port and Road. I had some great conversations with people about that. I'm excited about the possibilities of Roberts Bank Terminal 2 in Vancouver. I'm excited about the possibilities of Contrecoeur in Montreal. So there are some big things. That's why I'm asking you with great
respect, Minister, about a pipeline, because you went through a list of examples that do not have anywhere near the opposition that pipelines to Tidewater in this country have had. As Finance Minister, you oversaw the expenditure of $34 billion taxpayer dollars to just simply get one built. How does this change the scenario for any proponent that might be considering developing one? Does it actually? Because the Prime Minister's words were incredibly confusing on that front.
That's the end of Freeland, so you won't have to listen to that garbage anymore. But what she basically says is, I'm glad you talked about the other pipeline because that was great. I'm really proud of the pipe. That wasn't her question. The question is you guys still have Bill C-69 in. And that's a problem. That makes it very problematic to get things like pipelines done.
Right.
And the Liberals, they want to keep talking about this transition to green energy. Well, guess what? That's frickin' expensive.
Yeah, but they're going about it wrong. Again, if you watch that recent video from Pierre Poilievre, Canada doesn't live in a bubble. Like we're not only living in our own carbon emissions, right? We are part of the world, and other countries like China are burning coal at an alarming rate. Same with India. So if you get those countries on something that's a little bit cleaner, like LNG, then you will reduce the overall carbon footprint of the Earth. I think the stat that Pierre had given was if you put, I think it was China and India on Canadian LNG, then you can reduce the carbon footprint of those two countries by approximately Canada's entire carbon footprint. So effectively, in a way, making us net zero.
Well, and even more so, right? Because the problem is China keeps building coal plants like every couple of weeks. Like they are drastically increasing their need for energy. So if you then transition them completely off of coal and on to Canadian natural gas perpetually, then that demand keeps going up, and then you have a customer that is going to be, buying a ton of LNG from you and a ton of gas. It's not even funny how much money Canada could be making off of China alone on that gas moving over there. But there's no business case, right, Justin Trudeau?
But then if you have these other countries that Canada is helping support get them on natural gas, then Canada can focus on its nuclear program. because really nuclear is the way of the future. It's green, it's safe, and one rod will power 100 homes for 100, or no, sorry, it powers one home for 100 years.
Well,
So, and the rods are not large, like they're probably the size of like a 1/4-inch dowel. So we need to focus on nuclear, and we need to get other countries on LNG until we can get them onto nuclear, because nuclear is the way of the future.
Well, and we're also starting to catch up on fusion technology as well. So, there's a lot of neat things that are coming out of Canada that we need to be looking at. But the issue here is that Carney has no idea what projects are going to be built, even if there's going to be any built. The problem is what happens if none of the provinces can agree of what's going to be built. Freeland says, well, I love what Mark Carney said. He talked about the St. Lawrence Seaway. That was a massive project. Massive. And what did that do? That opened up the prairies to the rest of the world. That's what that did. So when you're talking about these types of projects, what do you guys think is going to happen here? The project that we need for that type of stuff is an inter Canada pipeline from BC all the way out to Eastern Canada. And that way we get every bit of natural gas and resources. If you want to turn that into a transportation corridor, you can get that anywhere in Canada and anywhere in the world. That would be a massive, massive economic boom for us, because we have all these resources. We can't get them out of the frickin' ground, and B, we can't get them to tidewater. So if you allow us to do that, that makes Canada very, very rich. I'm not going to say very, very fast, because it's going to take a long time to build this crap. But if we never get started, it never gets done.
Who was it? Was it Kevin O'Leary that said Canada's the richest country on earth run by morons?
Yeah, but run by idiots.